Welcome to everyone. This is the first of the two plenary sessions in which we will hear from two of our Alumni Award winners. The fifth award winner will be speaking tonight at the keynote dinner. The two awards that we are presenting this afternoon are the Horace Mann Award, Victories for Humanity, and the recipient is Bernie Geyer, class of 1965, and the Arthur Morgan Award, hold your applause, for support and service to the community, which is being given to John Knox, class of 1968. The format for today's session is that each awardee will be introduced individually and then give us a presentation of approximately 15 minutes. After the two awardees have talked to us, we will have a short award ceremony in which they will get their amazing plaques. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Judy Voigt, who will introduce Bernie Geyer, the winner of the Horace Mann Award.
Can you hear me? I don't know how to hold this so that you can hear me. This works? This works? Okay. What?
Turn up the volume.
Turn up.
Or speak louder.
Just speak
Oh,
louder.
okay. I'll speak loud and I'll speak into this and then you'll hear me really well. I can even hear myself now. Okay. The Horace Mann Award recognizes contributions by alumni of Antioch College who have won some victory for humanity, people whose personal or professional activities have had a profound effect on the present or future human condition. This year's award winner is Bernie Geyer, class of 65. So why him? Well, Bernie is the Zanville Krieger Professor Emeritus of Children's Health at Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, which is the top-rated school of public health in the country. He spent more than 4 decades working to improve the health of mothers, children, and families worldwide, both academically and in practice. He has translated scientific research into programs and policy to advance maternal and child health, such as childhood immunization and injury prevention. These are strategies that reduce infant mortality and increase early child health and development. So a little bit of history about Bernie. He graduated from Antioch College in 1965, then trained in pediatrics and earned his medical degree in 1970 from the University of Rochester School of Medicine and Dentistry. Between 72 and 77, he served as an officer for the Center for Disease Control, 3 years of which was in the smallpox eradication and measles control program in Cameroon, West Central Africa. His experience in particular here provided strong grounding for his later research. Between 79 and 89, Bernie was in Boston. There, he got his master's in public health from Harvard University. And in addition, he was the Massachusetts Department of Public Health Maternal and Child Health Director from 79 to 86, where he established one of the, I don't believe it. This is the second time this has happened to me, where my phone is the phone that has rung during the time I have been speaking. I don't know. I thought I had this thing off. That takes away from my 5 minutes. I'm reading this because I only have 5 minutes, and I want you to know what. Yeah, I'm trying. That's why I'm speaking fast and I'm reading. I apologize for that because it's not what I do. But anyway, he established one of the first maternal and child health research units in a public health department. And this was set a precedence for maternal and child health epidemiology to influence state programs and policy through evidence-based research and evaluation. To me, this is so important. Research is fine, but if you don't put it into practice, what's it good for? And he's been bridging that gap and putting things into practice. In '86, he was appointed Associate Professor, Department of Maternal and Child Health and director of the Injury Prevention Center at Harvard University School of Public Health. And then in '89 moved to Hopkins, where he was professor and chair of the Department of Maternal and Child Health and chaired the new Department of Population and Family Health Sciences from 1998 to 2003. There, he carried out research on reducing infant mortality, improving immunization coverage, and on the health of populations in disadvantaged urban neighborhoods. He served on the chair of the Governor's Commission on Infant Mortality Prevention and the board of the Baltimore Public Healthy Start. He's done, so he's not only in the public health department at Johns Hopkins, he's also out in the community in Baltimore. He's taught and mentored hundreds of students at Hopkins, Bloomberg School, and is the author of more than 300 publications. His numerous honors include Harvard School of Public Health's Award for Excellence in Teaching, American Public Health Association's Martha May Elliott Award, the Zena Stein and Mervyn Susser Award for Lifetime Achievement from the Coalition for Excellence in Maternal and Child Health Epidemiology, and from the University of Rochester Medicine and Dentistry, its Humanitarian Award in 2014. But then Bernie's not been satisfied just to be an academic and a policymaker in the outside world. He has not forgotten his alma mater. He came back and has been active in the Antioch College Alumni Association, and along with Amy Murayama, 1996, he helped launch the Science Alumni Chapter, which now has 550 members, and it's still growing. We just got 3 new members today, and if you're a scientist who has not gotten an email from me lately, see me afterwards and I'll get you on that Science Alumni list as well. So Bernie graduated from Antioch College in 1965. Prophetically, that's the year that Martin Luther King addressed the graduating class, including a memorable quote that I didn't realize he gave to this class, but he said, "The arc of moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice." And the Horace Mann Award recognizes alumni who have won some victory for humanity. It's clear to me that Bernie has won a victory for humanity in the field of maternal and child health, bending that arc of the moral universe more than a bit in a positive direction. Congratulations, Bernie.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you, Alumni Board. Thanks, Karen Mulhauser, Karen Forate. Amy Murayama is not here. I chatted to her a week ago or so ago. Thanks to her, and thanks to all of you for coming and participating. So I've got about 15 minutes. I've got a bunch of slides. You'll have to excuse me. I'm an old professor and I use PowerPoint. But there are basically 2 parts to this talk. One is all sentimental about me and being at Antioch and all those things we all remember whenever we come back to a reunion, right? And the other is sort of useful, and I want to get to that as quickly as I can. So, so you've given me this award. I'm greatly honored and thankful. And then I went back and read it, and of course, Tom Manley actually is the first person I heard say the first part of this quote, which is, "I beseech you to treasure up in your hearts these my parting words." That's kind of interesting that it's obviously a very 19th century way of talking. It has a kind of religious, spiritual component to it. It's not just political, the victory for humanity. Personally, though, I'm more comfortable with the wisdom of the fathers from the Talmud, which says, it's not up to us to complete the job of repairing the world, what people call tikkun olam, but neither can we fail to begin. So we all play our part. I went back and looked at the list, which is incredibly impressive. How can you be on this list? With Nobel laureates and Coretta Scott King and so forth. I knew George Comstock when I came to Hopkins. He was on the faculty there. Some of you may have known him Cy Reichlin was one of my teachers. Ruth Lawrence is somebody I still see when I go to Rochester in her 90s, still as a pediatrician. And Steve Gould was the TA for the class I took as a freshman here in embryology. As a freshman at Antioch, I took a course in embryology. You know, so it's a challenge to be added to this list. So I have no idea what victory I won for humanity. When I think about what's going on today in this country, it seems as though we've just gone all the way back to before any of us ever started. But I am grateful for this honor, and I want to thank you all for it. I was just lucky enough to be able to have a career in the field that made a difference. You know, I always worry about people who aren't doing the jobs that they love to do and that don't make a difference. And I always used to say to students, whatever you do, whether it's writing a dissertation or a piece of research, make sure that it actually makes a difference to people. And I had a chance to do that throughout my whole career. I did it as an academic. I did it when I was in the public health service. I had a chance to do it both in this country and the various places that I lived, and also in West Africa. I was just lucky. And I feel grateful for having been lucky, and always worked with generous colleagues and as part of teams that were never just doctors or scientists, but always had other people who played other roles and made it all work. Just a few things about myself that are not part of my biography, my CV. Those books that people write about your autobiography in 6 words, that kind of thing. I could do my autobiography in 2 words, which is exceeded expectations. I grew up in the alleys of Detroit, in an immigrant, Jewish, working class family. But I was lucky enough to start high school in 1957. September and October, the Russians launched Sputnik, and before the winter, I was enrolled in advanced science classes and spent every afternoon of my entire high school career in a biology laboratory with a guy named Alex Mercer, I'll show you his picture in a minute, who was married to an Antioch grad and felt that the place I should go to college was Antioch. I didn't even apply anywhere else. So in 1960, when I started, Antioch was known as a place that changed lives. And I feel as though what we learned here was not only how to be political radicals and all the rest of that, but we became good scientists. And the two seemed to go together. They weren't two different things that you had to choose one or another. When more recent time, when in medicine people have discovered issues of health inequalities, we always talked about health inequalities, and we always talked about how we could make a difference. I was very lucky to spend a year at Edinburgh as a Antioch Education Abroad. I had fantastic science education in Edinburgh. And not only that, I met Jane Mason Geyer, 50 plus years now, and we have 3 great kids and 5 grandchildren, so that makes for a good life. Here's some pictures that I thought I should show. So up in the upper left, that's me in one of my co-op jobs at the University of Rochester. I don't know if Kenny Geiger is here this year, but Kenny and I went several times back to this same job in the physiology labs at University of Rochester, where people did renal physiology on dogs. You couldn't even do that anymore, I don't think. But I learned an awful lot of good science and met great scientists. The picture on the right is actually me with hair on a kibbutz in Israel, and that's Jane and me when we were young, when we were kids starting out. So this is Alex Mercer, my high school biology teacher, and a person I knew through his entire life. He was incredibly important to me and my life. He had these deep-set dark eyes, and the high school students used to say about him that his embalmer had done a poor job that day. He was a lovely guy. And then I just want to, I have to remember all those people that have been part of the group that I came here with. And some of you will recognize Steve Goldberg, Mark Post, Steve Longstreth, Sandy Davis, Bob Merrill, and myself. Tom Newberry is in the bottom with a couple of spouses of the group. And some aren't here anymore. Steve. Steve Straker. Steve Straker, Sandy Davis along the top. Some of you knew John Charlotte, a great folk dancer and friend, and Bob Brody, a guy that died much too young but had a tremendous impact on the marine biology of the St. John River in Jacksonville, Florida, and I had an incredible correspondence with his wife after he passed away about all the things that he accomplished during his career. Okay, so that's the sentimental part. Now the more useful part. I always, when I went from Antioch to Rochester to go to medical school, I followed Eddie Goldson, who's here, and Alan Myers. And I wondered why I knew so many people there who had Antioch connections. So Ruth Lawrence, graduate of 1945. Cy Reichlin was one of my teachers. Ray Gambino is not somebody I knew, he's still alive, I understand. But I met friends of his since. Cy Warby was on the faculty there, and others. In fact, this list, I think, has about 30-something people on it that was identifiable by the folks here at Antioch and the folks at the University of Rochester Medical School. And I'm focusing on medicine because I went to medical school, not because I think it trumps other science or anything. We could probably do this list for several other places. But I began to wonder why there was this strong connection between Antioch and medical school. And so last year in particular, I spent some time with Scott Sanders in the Antioch archives, trying to understand what happened at Antioch that would account for why a little place like Antioch had so many strong graduates who went on to graduate school in the sciences in particular, in medicine in particular, but it's true across so many different fields that all of you represent in your own. And the answer lies, I think, with these two central characters, and particularly with Henry Federighi. I had to go this morning and just checked with Scott that no one has ever written a biography of Henry Federighi, but I think it's worth doing, and hopefully one of you or me or one of the students who's here now will undertake writing a real biography of his contributions. 30 years as head of biology. He retired just before I got here in 1960, so I never really knew him personally myself. And then Ed Samuel was here for 20 years, and Ed was my mentor and mentor to many of us who are here in the room. So it's worth thinking a little bit about what these people did, particularly Federighi. And I found an interesting book called Distinctive Colleges, published in 1970 by a man named Burton Clark. And it talks about Antioch College, Reed, and Swarthmore. And it identifies what are the characteristics of these colleges that made them distinctive, and why did they give such good educations. And among them were many of the things that you and I are very comfortable with. They were places that developed intense relationships with their students. And they had strong curricula, but they also became part of your life. And I think Henry Federighi is the person who developed. I don't know this from any of his writing, by the way. I'm just inferring this from the things that I've seen. I have not done an in-depth study of his work. But I think he was a keen strategist and said to himself, okay, Arthur Morgan has appointed me to the faculty of this little college in Ohio. It's got some interesting aspects, the co-op program, and so forth and so on. How can I make a difference in the future? And his answer was, how can I prepare people for successful careers in his area, which was biology. He was never much of a researcher. I could only find a handful of papers that he ever published, so it wasn't his own personal research that was so important. It was his role as an educator and as a mentor. And he built relationships with, I'm going to show you some documents in a minute, but let me give you the spiel. He built relationships with medical schools and graduate schools, in particular Harvard, Case Western Reserve, Rochester, Michigan, maybe a few others. He did lifetime mentoring of the science graduates and the biology graduates that he worked with. The sort of notion of emotional intensity. He wrote letters to his graduates throughout their careers, including when they went into practice in medicine and decisions they had to make about further training or what they were going to do in their own work. And he monitored the performance of the program in a way that I think all of the educational administrators would envy right now. And then he did a thing that came up in the meeting we had earlier today with the science alums, which was he developed programs for high school science teachers to come to Antioch in the summer and learn about the biology here. And Alex Mercer, my high school biology teacher, had been here for several summers and felt as though he would send his best students to Antioch. So here's some examples. I'm not sure how good these come out, but here's a letter of correspondence between him and George Whipple at the University of Rochester Medical School about some graduate or some aspect of the program. I won't take a lot of time with these. He used to get these communications from the American Association of Medical Colleges about the MCAT scores of Antioch graduates and how they compared to other schools and to the national averages. So he was monitoring how were the graduates of the program doing in terms of their MCAT scores. He kept track of, this is from a report of the American Association of Medical Colleges that's over in the Antiochiana, of how Antioch graduates did against all of the medical school students from all other Ohio colleges. So you can see that we were right at the top in 1930 to 38. Even though the numbers were small, there were only 16 Antiochians who went on to medical school. None of them dropped out, none of them failed in the first year, and 87% passed all their requirements in the first year of medical school. Better than Ohio State, better than, where's, anyway, I don't see, it's way down at the bottom. Hey. Okay, so this is, this is really keeping track of what goes on. And here he has handwritten lists of all the graduates going to these different medical schools, and I can't even read my own slide here, I'm afraid. But keeping track of them. And again, as I said, there are individual handwritten letters of this correspondence with them. Well, what's the message? So the message is, I think there's a lesson here, which is the kind of the future of Antioch's own science and biology and education is going to be different than it was in the 1930s when Henry Federighi started out. But the process is the same. It's strategic thinking. It's thinking about what creates the right kinds of science for the 21st century. What kind of science education do citizens need? Why is it in this country we can't believe in climate change? We're not educated in the right things, and science is always political. And I think people like Henry Federighi recognize that. He wanted to prepare students for successful careers. I think that's what parents want to invest in when they send their kids to college, is successful careers. It's not just the college, it's where are they going to end up when they grow up and when they have their families. So I think that's something we need to think about here. We have the incredible opportunity to integrate the co-op experience into undergraduate education more than other schools do. I look back on my years of being a co-op at the University of Rochester as some of the best experiences of my whole life. Our faculty want to be good educators, good mentors, good scientists. We need to make these strong connections with the medical schools, graduate schools, wherever we're going to expect our students to go on, so that they don't feel as though they're just sort of reaching out into the abyss to find a place that will be good for them, but have connections there. And finally, this notion of, came up also this morning about feeder schools. I recently learned that Bard College actually creates relationships with high schools, in Baltimore even, where the students who go there get credit toward a Bard degree, and they meet faculty who have connections with Bard College, and they feel comfortable going on to Bard as a place to go to college. That would fit our kind of Antioch. And then finally, fostering a community of Antioch science that includes alumni, faculty, and students. I think the kind of things that Judy has been doing with the alumni science, what do we call that group? Affinity group, fit that kind of model and could be extended. So that's it from me. Thank you very much. I greatly appreciate this.
We have a microphone, if people, don't go away. We have a few minutes if anyone has, we have stated.
So we have time for one or two questions for Bernie, if anyone has anything. Otherwise, of course, afterwards. Okay, Aria, we've got this, wait for the mic. Gary, right, put your hand back up, Gary. This is a throwable microphone. But don't hit anybody.
Droppable.
Hi, Bernie. I work for the Public Health Service for off and on. And I'm curious if you have any idea what % of American mothers have received adequate maternal and child health care? I'm talking primarily about pre-birth health care.
You're talking about advice about mothering and
No, I'm talking about clinical care.
clinical care.
I mean, covering, nutrition and all the other things that are important to,
But you're implying at a high standard, a standard that you would be happy with.
yes.
In this country, just about everybody has, it's very unusual to find kids who have no prenatal care. It's pretty rare. But, is it the kind of care that addresses all of the issues that are important to the best outcome for that particular child, that particular family? There you could raise issues about how do you get the best kind of care. And does it need to come from the public health service, or does it come from, we're basically, in this country, we exist in a private sector pretty much, You may have different views on that, but that's how, so, if you go to the American Academy of Pediatrics and you ask them, what kind of health care do they promote for young families, moms of young children and so forth, it will be at a very high standard.
Then why do we have such lousy outcomes? I mean, the United States is way, way down if you look at,
Well,
European countries.
The answer to that is the outcomes are not just dependent on medical care. They depend on all those other things that we know make a difference, whether you have an adequate income, whether you live in good housing, whether you're employed, whether you're supported by a community. It's not just medical. So the advice can be very medical and very good, and nutrition fits into that and so forth. But if somebody is living in in a really underprivileged, intensely underprivileged place like the center of Baltimore, all the advice in the world doesn't help them to overcome the problems that they have to face to make that child and that family healthy. If people are shooting in your neighborhood, not much your doctor can do about that except be a good citizen, right? And participate in the process that will make a difference.
Unfortunately, I think we could spend the rest of the afternoon on this. That's why we have social events later. Thank you, Bernie. And we
Good afternoon, Antiochians.
Good afternoon.
I'm David Vincent. I'm on the Alumni Board. The reason for being here is to
Can't hear
introduce...
you. Put the microphone.
Bring it closer to your mouth.
Eat the mic.
The mic.
Screen. It's my turn now.
It's on. It's on. Eat it.
Good afternoon. It's not evening, but welcome and congratulations, Bernie. Class of 65. I'm in class of 65. There's 65ers here. On the Alumni Board, one of the things that's most enjoyable is choosing the alumni awardees each year. It's a challenge. There's a lot of competition for the awards, and at reunion we introduce them. Today I'm going to let you know that we're very fortunate to have John Knox as a recipient. His background and his career still is in the environmental movement. He's been with the David Brower Center in Berkeley for many, many years, and he could have ended up in Hollywood a long time ago. So I'm going to cut my 5 minutes down to 2 minutes. I'm going to hand it over to John. John, you don't have to look at yourself. Once each month at the David Brower Center in Berkeley, John hosts the San Francisco Bay Area chapter. If you're in the Bay Area, come and visit us. It starts at 10 o'clock, And we, first thing on the agenda is gossip. There's no chairman, and it's a very enjoyable. You ready?
I'm ready, but we need to cut the film.
No, it's-
The best part's coming up.
There's no sound.
There must be a way to stop this. Thank you very much. Thank you all. It's so gratifying to be here and to be here with so many friends. Why are we talking about the Arthur Morgan Award? Because Arthur Morgan was a practitioner, a celebrant, and really a guru for community. And I think in the Antioch world, we think of him as Mr. Community. I'm very honored to be part of this. There's a little update from last year. Gabriel Metcalf had gotten this award, and you all might be interested to know that he's leaving San Francisco Planning and Urban Development and moving to Sydney, Australia to do some innovative urban planning work, I assume. Okay, this is the indulgent part, and then maybe there will be a useful part. Thank you, Bernie, for that distinction. I got here as a transfer student, and Antioch was extremely important to me. I had started out at Lafayette College in Easton, Pennsylvania, which is a Presbyterian men's school with compulsory ROTC and compulsory chapel. I learned a lot there. It was a big opening up for this boy from rural Ohio, but what I saw was pretty dismal, and I was looking very hard to find a place that would enable me to encounter the real world and maybe do something. So a friend of my father's said, "Oh, I know this guy Wally Sykes, Antioch College." So I took time out after my first semester and came down here to visit. And this was the first of many chapters with Wally, and Wally made me want to come to Antioch. And so I did the transfer. It was a cool thing, but it was very forbidding. This was a very innovative place that had a lot of things going on that I understood very poorly. It was indeed a chance to broaden my horizons. And so I entered in the summer of 1964, and actually, Steve Cake was in that transfer hall. I'm not sure if you've got others here. Oh, hi. I think transfers have a particular wisdom to lend to Antioch, because Antioch is a place where you get right to getting a relevant education in loco parentis is missing. And so I was very grateful to be here. And really, the Antioch community introduced me to community. Time and time again, Wally Sykes being a key personality, and there was a long list of amazing teachers and administrators and so on who opened doors for me and who really influenced the future of my life, and I'm extremely gratified for that. The things that I did in later life, I think, are also have been influenced specifically. So I became a conscientious objector while I was at Antioch, which was a very unlikely outcome, having been a ROTC person in my freshman year in college. I think I'm probably the only one in the Antioch experience. That would be my guess. So I did my CO work in San Francisco, and it was the tumultuous fall of 1968. There were lots of choices, but lots of us got dislocated from our original assumptions. I did not go to the University of Michigan in clinical psychology. I did not go to the Peace Corps in Swaziland. I went to do my alternative service in San Francisco at the San Francisco Community Rehabilitation Workshop. So that introduced me in a deeper way to San Francisco, and I've been there ever since. And really, so many things that I got into in subsequent years had an element of community. And I'm going to make a distinction here. I'm not a social psychologist or a sociologist, but if we look at our social institutions, they are about helping us get stuff. They are about transactions, things that we need. I would distinguish transactions from context, meaning I think community is about those ineffable qualities of how we get what we need in our institutions and how organizations can help us. And I think Antioch began to teach me that we want to encourage institutions that think more than just about transactions. Now, I think that looking at Antioch, I'm going to switch and I want to put a little lens on Antioch because I'm a big booster of the college. We're not out of the woods yet. You know, this is not a viable institution yet. And I think it's really important for us to look at kind of two things. One is Antioch in its history, and I think we need to study this history. This amazing group this morning, the African American Studies folks, very revelatory. I just came from the environmental field program, incredibly excited folks. Community was in practice here. And I think the most exciting things were frequently the shiny new objects that came out of what was happening in the society. And then there was the classic base of what a college would want to equip people, maybe what we would call general education. So, you know, you can look back and see in the late 60s where a bunch of us were in terms of the civil rights movement, social justice was dawning. There was no environmental movement except for maybe the Glen and Ed's final lecture, which I only heard about. So there have been these periods, these zeitgeists, these themes du jour of different periods at Antioch. And I think that there's an Antioch core, and then there's been a huge openness to what is the new thing that our society needs us to pay attention to. And I think that's an amazing thing for us to keep focused on because we blew it somewhere along the line and almost lost the college. We did for a while and got it back. We have to pay attention to the core, but I think we also have to maybe consciously look at what may be coming up. Can we get ahead of the curve? I did sort of a list here. You know, gender justice came later after our period. Good that it did. The environmental movement. Intersectionality is upon us. Do we understand that very well? And it's an attempt to kind of look at oppression of all sorts and equip our students for dealing with it. I think in the different generations we have trouble understanding things that have come after us. But I think it's quite important for us to have a theme that we're ready. We have the vessel that's out on the high seas, and we're trying to move things so that our students are in the on the cutting edge. And sometimes that works, and sometimes it doesn't. So I just think keeping a focus on it is probably important. I think we might need a book or a guide or an oral history about Antioch College. The stories this morning from the folks who were in the program in the late 60s and early 70s were very instructive, and they have some differences among themselves, but I think a bunch of us don't know the stories very well. And I think maybe we need to help our current students have a sense of these histories and these periods and how the college has risen to the occasion or not, in terms of having people not just have the biology background or the math backgrounds and so on, but a great awareness of what's happening and how they can make an impact in the time while they're at the college and then soon thereafter. I had a term here, it's fostering intergenerational appreciation. I think that we all need to understand what are the pressures, what are the themes that are coming up for students. And I would argue that the students need to understand about some of the things that we've been through, some of the understandings and so on. Why? Because there's some people missing here. Not that Bernie and I wouldn't attract a really great audience, but where are the younger folks? Where are the current students? Thank you. I think that we should be thinking about reunion maybe in a different context, meaning that we have some incredible alums, and some of them are from my class of '68. I don't know. I don't think Bruce Wolk or Lois Wolk are here, but they're folks from Davis, California. These are people with incredible experiences in the world that we should be looking at as resources for, not for co-ops, for trying to develop co-ops, for trying to develop relationships in the communities, for being mentors, maybe outside of our other systems. I don't know what it is, but I think that if you look at the survival of Antioch College, it's been because of you all. It's been because of alums, but we barely did it, and we're still doing it. And I think we need to find more ways to tap into the very vital resources among our alums, in addition to the cool resources that are on the faculty and so on. I don't have a specific idea about how that goes, but I know Tom is doing a great job with the college, trying to move us into some new areas with the areas of practice, and we're talking about maybe having somebody on the West Coast who does some of this liaison with the community to develop better community relations. I just think that the alums, us all, ought to be thinking in creative ways about how we can bring our resources to bear for the benefit of our students and for the benefit of the college as a presence in communities like the San Francisco Bay Area. There are a number of people in this room who are part of our little party that we have once a month in Berkeley. It should be fun. We're all enjoying each other, getting together as alums, and we're trying to also develop resources for the college at the same time. I think another thing that we should think about, and I haven't talked to anybody at the administration about this, another bunch of folks who are missing here are the nonstop folks. I don't know if anybody here would identify as a nonstop person. All right. There's a little bit of a gap, and some people may or may not know that some of the nonstop people feel that they can't be associated with the current Antioch College and would like there to be a broader story about the college, meaning that they think that the nonstop story is missing. I'm very interested in that. I think maybe a way to deal with that is to have some listening sessions in our communities. We're not getting to younger alums, we're missing some of the nonstop folks, and I think it's a chance for us to take seriously the people in the communities around the country who have had an association with Antioch and who may be part of our future, and maybe it's a question of drawing on oral histories and so on to tell a more comprehensive story about the college, even though some of these chapters can be painful. I forgot to bring it up. I'm going to put on the back table some Earth Island Institute stuff. I've done a number of things in my community in the San Francisco Bay Area. I am a leader in the environmental movement. I just came from the environmental field program. Very cool folks. They're very excited about this stuff. I hope you all can contact me if you'd like more information about what Earth Island does. Earth Island is part of the David Brower Center, as David Vincent mentioned. I would like to be a resource for this community and for our college, and I'll provide some information by which you can sign up. I think that's probably it for the moment. I wanted to see if I could raise some questions about the future of communities and the future of Antioch College, and I think you all are the ones who can make that happen. Thank you.
Where is our bouncy microphone? Okay, so. Yes, but I'm looking for the red box microphone, and here it comes. So if you just hold on for a second. Okay.
Right over here.
Yeah, right over there.
I'll say it and then I'll say it again. into
Those
the
are my
microphone.
friends over there.
Hi, John. But, I'm
All your friends. Right.
I'm getting the impression that there may be some people in the group here that might not know what nonstop
Thank you.
meant. So if you can explain that a little bit. Thanks.
I'll take a shot at this. Oh, would you mind if I took a shot?
No,
and then
take
you
a
could-
shot and then I'll fill in the gaps.
Great. Many of you know that in 2007, there was a very bitter surprise raised with the trustees of Antioch College saying they wanted to close, Antioch University, wanted to close Antioch College. There was a bunch of scurrying. Everybody, there had been people involved for a long time with the Alumni Association. There were current students, there were current faculty, and there was a lot of organizing activity, and you can correct me about when nonstop might have begun, but it was envisioning that the college would close in 2008 and that there needed to be something of a transitional institution to keep the Antioch spirit alive. When the college did close, there was actually a place and an organization and a number of people here in Yellow Springs and a lot of people outside, and there were classes carried on, and there were some people involved with Nonstop who played key roles in some of the negotiations to wrest the college from the university. I might want to stop there. I'll just say that there were some people who had ideas about how the new college should be structured and how it should unfold. Not all those came to fruition, and I think it's fair to say that a number of Nonstop people think that the college is not their college and that they're holding back until maybe there can be more from the current college to acknowledge the Nonstop period. Would you like to say more?
Is this on? I was part of Nonstop and, I'm Susan Eklund-Lean. I was in the co-op department for 22 years, starting in 1991. I was one of the 3 faculty members selected by the other faculty members to lead the development of Nonstop. So I was there every single day, all the time. Nonstop, in my opinion, was a key pressure point on the university. We had events almost every week. We were in the newspaper every single week. We had, I had developed a nice relationship with Scott Jasek at the time, who was part of Inside Higher Ed, so we were often mentioned in his articles then. And really, when the college was getting ready to be closed by the university, we started a 2-prong approach. We had a group of individuals that were working very hard with an attorney to develop a lawsuit. We were developing Nonstop at the same time, and we were working with the American Association of University Professors on a grievance. So it took a lot of people, and there weren't a lot of us, to get all of that work done. So we worked very, very hard. The one thing that I think was the most important, though, was the fact that we would not back down. The alumni were supporting us financially, and we put a lot of pressure on the university because every time they turned around, they had to respond to something else that was happening here in Yellow Springs. And my twin sister told Diane Chittister that she should have gotten a Pulitzer for her coverage of Nonstop in the newspaper. She was such an ally, and so that activity was, I think, critical in the university knowing that Antiochians don't give up. Whether we graduated from there or worked there, we just didn't give up. And so that's my upside of, you know, how we looked at ourselves in the whole process of Nonstop.
And Nonstop was given, one of the awards.
And here,
Nonstop was given the, was it the Arthur Morgan Award? It was one of the awards.
Yeah, it was, yeah, we were. At the first reading and after reopening, yes.
Right. So it was recognized by the new administration as being vital to
I'm going to interject for just a second here.
By the alumni, excuse me,
Okay.
by the alumni.
This conversation can be continued tomorrow afternoon. We have another session called Reconstructing Our Community, and Hassan Rahmanian, who was part of the old, the Nonstop, and the new, is going to be one of our conversationalists. So we're running, unfortunately, out of time. I'd like to ask David Scott to come up now and have both of our award winners, Bernie, if John, don't go away. Bernie, come back, come here. Judith, where's David Vincent? I know you're around. I want you to, yes, please. No, the introducers will actually stand with their awardees. And David, if you would explain the origin of the plaques that they're getting.
The plaques, we used to give awards that we bought from some trophy company. And I said, wait a second, why are we doing that? Why don't we reward and support local artists? Yeah. So Beth Holyoke is the artist of these awards, and this is the second year she's done it. She's the woman, along with Katie, who does these tiled benches you see around town. So she's a big tilist, but she does these beautiful awards, and she also is, her husband's father is Tom Holyoke, a professor at Antioch, but she spends every summer for a couple of months in Greece helping the refugees there. So she and her husband went over to Greece, and she just got back about a week ago, just in time to do the awards. So I think it's nice that it's a local artist that produces the awards rather than some company somewhere.
Cool. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
please, Karen,
It's light enough so that it won't be better.
Just one other comment about John Knox and community and Jennifer Berman. And that is that once we did get our college back, the independent Antioch College, Jennifer Berman and Al Denman were asked to pull together a group to help think about how the new Antioch was going to have the DNA of community. And John Knox, that's when I met John. And spent, I don't know how many times you brought us together, Jennifer, but several times too. And Jewel Graham and Al Denman and Tendaji and just some amazing people who understand community at Antioch. We came back on a regular basis to talk about how to help the new Antioch. And so, Jennifer, thank you for doing that. And John, it's great to meet you.
Just one thing that I noted when John spoke this afternoon. He barely said anything about Earth Island Institute. He does have some brochures up there. They publish 4 times a year a magazine. It covers part of the Earth Island is an umbrella organization. There's over 100 groups that support environmental issues, and they have short articles in there. It's a good overview. It's much more entertaining than National Geographic. And you learn an awful lot, and it's only $15 a year. Thank you very much.